Welcome, everyone. When change needs to happen in sports with a bigger picture impact on humanity, it often starts with Christine Brennan, giving a story a heartbeat. The talented, tough, and tenacious, and very busy Christine Brennan has been a prominent, trusting, and famous sports journalist for decades. Christine's USA Today column, award-winning reporting, and best-selling work resonates with audiences as an important voice of reason, activating moral compasses globally. It is exciting to welcome the brave, respected, and groundbreaking Christine Brennan to Little Starlight. Thank you for joining us.
Wow, what a lovely introduction, Andrea. You know, I'm a fan of yours. It was so cute when you got in touch with me and kind of like introduced yourself. It's like the great Andrea Yeager needs no introduction in an email to me. Just a rock star. And of course, so great to be with you too, Adriana. So thank you very much for having me.
Oh, we're super excited. So we're going to get right to it. Now, sports allows for a great many things, one being an opportunity to benefit society when stories are accurately represented and reported. Sports and society often mirror each other. When was the first time you wrote when you felt your words amplified beyond the sports pages, ready to activate change on a bigger platform?
You know, I'm thinking back. It's a great question. I've never really had that question before, which is excellent reporting. You could be a journalist in another life, Andrea. I was at the Miami Herald, and I wrote a story about a track coach in the urban areas, the underserved areas of Miami. I forget exactly where now. I'd have to go back and look. And it was probably starting my career. You know, it might have been one of those times we feel like our paths crossed at some point when, of course, you were, in tennis in the early 80s and mid 80s, whatever. And I was at the Miami Herald. Anyway, this is where I started my career after coming out of Northwestern. And I did this story. And the lead of the story, the first paragraph, was something like this: the track coach doesn't have a stopwatch. And it was true. He didn't. And of course, this is back in the day with a stopwatch. It's not like you could do it on your phone or your watch. So I wrote that, and then that was the lead. I kept going. The story was about his work with these young kids, all Black kids for sure, and children of color in, as I said, in the urban underserved community. And so I wrote, it appeared in the Miami Herald, which of course had huge reach back in the day, before the internet, before any of this stuff. And all of a sudden I started getting calls at the Miami Herald at my desk. So those were the days people could really find a reporter, call them at a landline at the Miami Herald, and people offering to donate money, buy him a stopwatch, obviously, but lots of people wanted to buy him a stopwatch. And where could they donate? So I just called him. I said, "You will not believe the reaction to this." I had no idea. I just wrote it. He had no idea. And so I connected him with all these people. And I have no idea. I mean, that was the end of that. But clearly, there were a lot of people who were helping him. So I realized then the power of a story, even though this was a sports story, but I led it the way I did as a 3-year-old with the track coach does not have a stopwatch. And that obviously was me in my brain. I wasn't thinking anything beyond that's a fascinating beginning to a story, but that really truly took it from sports into our culture, because clearly the next inference is, oh my gosh, why not? Let's help this man. So I think I realized the power that I had started to have anyway, and started to realize at that time.
That's great. Now, with technology, you mentioned things are different now. There's so much technology-wise, and it's constantly growing audiences for where they can get their variety of news, whether it's sports or other information. Readers love and wait for your column. I know this because I'm one of those readers. You give audiences permission to resonate with truth on what they may feel is too bold to publicly express themselves. So do you feel a greater responsibility now than when you first started in your career?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, one is you become experienced in life, as we all know, and experienced in a job, then you end up with more confidence. You're smarter, you have knowledge. So while I felt I was totally ready to be launched into this world at the Miami Herald, then the Washington Post, I was a reporter then. And by that, I mean just beat writer. So not just, but covering football, covering stories like finding features like that track coach. And then the Washington Post, I started covering the Washington football team. And so obviously, if that's your job, covering the team, then you're writing about why they won or lost, what's wrong with the quarterback, why, are they going to sign another running back, all those kinds of stories. And there's really no time in the day for me to do anything else, nor would I even have been called upon to do that because there were columnists at the Washington Post, not me. So just by definition, I was a reporter covering beats well into my 20s and 30s. I started writing some columns when I was like 34, 35 for the Washington Post, enjoyed that. Then I had a couple of best-selling books on figure skating, Inside Edge, Edge of Glory. The success of those books allowed me and mandated really for me financially that I leave the Post and start to do more books, speeches, TV, other things. So I was so lucky to have that success. At that point, within about a year, USA Today asked, would I be interested in writing a column for them? That was 1997. And that's when I started writing columns for USA Today. And so that really was the opportunity because now I'm 100% opinion. I am now giving my opinion. I have a column and it's a national stage with USA Today. So there's that. And then, so you've got that piece of it. And then as it happens, the nation and the world is becoming more sensitive and more informed about societal issues, and athletes, it pendulum swings, right? I mean, you've done this, Andrea, far more than I in terms of what's going on in sports, but 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever. 60s, now you have Muhammad Ali and Billie Jean King and the Black Power salute in 1968 from the two runners, Carlos and Tommy Smith, John Carlos and Tommy Smith at the 68 Mexico City Olympics. You have that time. Then we kind of swung back to Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan first, then Tiger Woods, with much more corporate acquiescence.
It's amazing how much information you have. I mean, in sports and in society, the world of knowledge that you have, just even in these few minutes, the stats and data, it's like so accomplished. I mean, some hard to hear, some important to hear. So an important change, you talked about that, but when important change can happen when a story is shared honestly and for the betterment of humanity intention. Harm can occur when a story is falsely reported. You double check, even triple check your facts and information. That is really important to you. Sports, like much of life, is ever flowing on a 24/7 news cycle. And in fact, we'll probably encounter that during this episode because we're watching a score that Christine has to jump off. And I will tell you, it looks like, hold on, everyone. Stay with us. It is in a tiebreak, and I'll keep you posted. I'll keep you posted. Okay. So when if it goes to a fifth, then we're okay. If not, you jump off. Okay. So exactly. To go back. And well, again, though, but what you're showing the podcast, welcome to the world of a journalist. And that's what my question was. Yeah. For anyone wanting to enter your career, what is your career like busy wise, especially when you have a tough deadline to meet? Right. So, it is super exciting. I always think this when I wake up in the morning and step out of bed, I have no idea how the day is going to end. And I love that. Now, there are moments if you have a day planned, if there's a family event, that's not great because, but I'm pretty good over the years of making sure, I would not, I remember I was babysitting my niece and nephew who are now, one just graduated from college, the other's in college playing sports, and she's a great athlete, and he's just graduated, and they were little kids. And this was when the Tiger Woods scandal, and you might say, what scandal? Which one? Sorry. But whatever scandal it was, Larry King show, I didn't work for CNN. Now I work for CNN. I work for USA Today, and I'm contracted with CNN and ABC News. And I'm so honored. I also do some PBS NewsHour and NPR. So I'm so fortunate, so lucky. I mean, I can't believe it. I just am so, you work hard, but you still got to, have luck. And I wasn't working for CNN then, but obviously, in my world, it's good to be on CNN if I can be. Anyway, and so Larry King's show asked me to be on. And I was babysitting for these two little kids, my niece and nephew. And I said, no, I'm going to be babysitting for my niece and nephew. And I know the booker well. And it turns out I'd been on the day before and I was going to, but you never know when you say no, if they, if they're like, well, okay. But clearly that was 2009. And I've been on TV a lot. So the decision did not harm my career. I've done a lot of that. The Live Golf story broke
the Live and PGA Tour.
So let me ask you, I apologize to interrupt. You've done a lot of what? Saying no or?
Yeah.
Okay. So you haven't been able to say no. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and so it's like, you can't, with me, with all the various hats I wear, you got to probably know you just can't do literally everything, right? I mean, if I want to have some semblance of normalcy, and I do carve that out, I really try to get a lot of sleep. I hardly drink. I've never smoked a cigarette. Those are things that I very much care about, because if I'm not healthy, then I'm not gonna be able to do any of this, right? And I'm almost 6 feet tall, and I've been an athlete my whole life. I mean, it's just a part of me to do more than just be at my laptop, right? But the Live Golf PGA Tour merger, which was June 6th, I remember because I was flying to Paris that night for a pre-Olympic trip and taking the same niece and nephew, obviously now college age. And all of a sudden I'm having to say no to so many shows because I'm going to be on a plane flying out of Dulles Airport to Paris. And of course I said no. I did a few, and I don't regret it at all now, because those are the kind of things that, and again, all those people, I work for them now, and they understood, and it was very logical, that clearly I was going to do something for my work, a pre-Olympic trip for the next year's Olympics. So I'd say probably I say yes to things. When we're talking here right now, I said yes to possible CNN hit right away, and it'd actually be around 1:00. So probably, got a little time to prepare.
I'm watching the score. I'm helping you out and watching the score.
You are. You're my research assistant, and you can carry my laptop.
Actually, we're doing good. I apologize because I want this American to do really well, but I prefer the fifth set, and we might be going there. So, okay. So
right. No, we are complete agreement that we're talking about the news value versus what we want. Yeah. Which, by the way, is another segue. People ask all the time, do you want someone to win? Do you want, was I cheering for the Washington football team? Well, I wasn't cheering for the Washington football team. I was covering them. That's like, would I be cheering for a presidential candidate I'm covering if I were a political reporter? No. A lot of writers, especially in small towns, do end up kind of being cheerleaders for their college team. And I understand that. If you're in a tiny town and it's a football team in that university town, okay, that's one thing. I'm lucky to have the ability and also the training from Northwestern to know that I'm not a fan, right? I am a fan of some things. I'm a fan of my nieces, playing in college. I'm a fan of other, of course, but I'm not cheering. So even if I'm at the Olympics, of course, would I like to see Katie Ledecky win another gold medal? Of course I do. She lives a couple of miles from me, and mom and dad, her brother, I know them. But I am not outwardly cheering because I'm covering the event. I'm tweeting, and that's my role.
Fifth set.
All right.
Okay.
So
Adriana,
breaking news right into the podcast. And
I know.
Watching this, and they're going to say, "What are you talking about?"
I know, we're going to leave it in. We're going to leave it in. This is your life. So this is excellent. Thank you for sharing. Now, I know Adriana is eager to join as well. So Adriana, what would you like to share?
Hi, Christine. It is wonderful to be on the podcast with you. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. It's a true honor. You have accomplished a lot in your life. From just talking to you and doing research and reading all about you. It's incredible. It's truly inspiring. You have written 7 books so far. Your sports memoir, Best Seat in the House, is the only father-daughter memoir written by a sports journalist. Best Seat in the House describes how your father, Jim Brennan, encouraged you to believe that you could do anything and play any sport you wanted to. And when you couldn't be on the field, he was by your side in the stands, and you always thought the seat next to your father was the best seat in the house. I love that. What are some of the qualities your father had that you adopted into your life? I switched gears a little bit. So
I love it. No, I love that question. And thank you. He passed away almost 20 years ago, August of 2003. So, but he lives in my heart and every second, and my siblings, of course, and everyone. And that's kind of the beautiful thing about life, is that they're 100 times a day, right? It's in my head, a thought. I'm laughing about something with my dad or my mom, because my mom was so instrumental as well, obviously. Even though I focused on the father-daughter piece of it, as of course you correctly said. Certainly one of his favorite sayings was, "This ain't no dress rehearsal," meaning this is life. You got to go for it. Hence the idea of adventure every day, what we're talking about right now. Take strong stands, say it, listen, if someone's going to read my column, it's going to take 3, 4, or 5 minutes, whatever, to read it. I'm going to give them my best shot because I thank them for reading my column. I'm not going to waste the time. They may be angry at the end of reading it, but they'll know where I stand, and I have not wishy-washed my way through a couple of minutes out of their life. And so that came from my dad, of course, without a doubt. And, even little things like date every piece of paper. So, I'm trying to, I've got notes here, and, I'm not going to show you all my notes, but
my gosh.
7,
yes. 4, that's amazing.
Some to-do stuff, but 7/4, 23. It's a story I need to write, a trip that I took yesterday, people I need to call, whatever. And I've got several other pieces of paper with just little notes and things, and every single one, date every piece of paper. Now, when I was a teenager and my dad's saying, date that piece of paper, it's like someone's phone number that you're about, like, okay. And I put a date and then I threw it away. Now we'd recycle, of course, but back then, because like, Dad, this is so stupid, I just threw the piece of paper away. I mean, I was going to throw it away anyway, right? It's not I did it on purpose. It was like, I had the phone number, I dialed it, I threw the piece of paper away. He goes, no, do that every day, every piece of paper. Well, thank you, Dad, times a million. And the moral of the story for everyone listening, listen to your parents, especially young people. Definitely your parents are right. You don't think they're right, they're right. Because, I mean, how many times have I gone into a filing cabinet and found a notebook that I'm looking for a quote or just a note or something I wrote? And like, when did I do this? There's the date on that piece of paper. And like, thank you, Dad. So there's those things. Also just the power of sports and the support he had. He was my own personal Title IX. I was just starting freshman year of high school when Richard Nixon signed Title IX in June of 72. But really, as Andrea knows well, Title IX was basically ignored for a good 10 or 15 years in our country. People didn't, oh, what? There's Title IX? What is it? It was meant for law schools and med schools originally. Richard Nixon signed it. If you're getting federal funding, you cannot discriminate against women. Hello, duh. And so law schools, med schools, you had to have equal opportunity. Well, guess what? Now law schools are more than 50% women. Med schools are now more than 50% women. In the next 50, 60 years, today's 10-year-old, if she goes to a man as a doctor, she'll probably say, I go to a male doctor, because it'll be so unusual when she's like 50 years old or so. I'm not saying we're not going to have male doctors, but the way we used to say, I have a woman doctor or a woman lawyer, well, that's going to be the norm. And so that's Title IX as well. Anyway, bottom line is I'm playing sports, I'm loving sports. And every single game, I mean, our girls basketball at Ottawa Hills High School, and we were pretty good on at least giving girls opportunities for sure. A small little suburb right outside of Toledo, beautiful place. I still own our family home there in Ottawa Hills. I'm the only person who works at the Olympics and vacations in Toledo. And anyway, he would come, and our games would usually be like for basketball, even volleyball, whatever. They'd be like at 4 p.m. And I could hear the click, click, click of my dad's heels. As he would be walking maybe around the outside of the basketball court, as people did. There was room to find a seat, and I could turn around and see my dad was there. And he was the only dad that would come. Now, he owned his own business, so he had the freedom to come and watch his daughter play in the afternoon on a Tuesday or Thursday. But yeah, so talk about empowering. And when most girls, even as a 5, 6-year-old, when most girls were being told, no, you can't play sports, my dad and my mom were saying, yes, you can. And so I was playing catch with my dad in the front yard, and the other kids would come over, and girls were always allowed, not just boys. And so my dad was the first feminist I ever knew. Now, he would not, back in the 60s, right? He wouldn't have liked that term. I mean, that would have hated it. What an interesting thing, right? The biggest feminist I knew was the biggest Republican, old school Republican that I knew. And we learned early on in our family to not let stereotypes get in the way of how we looked at people.
Oh, that's amazing. And I'm going to connect the next question to actually what you started to talk about, Title IX, and your father being a feminist at the time. You're a longtime advocate for women in sports journalism. You were the first president of the Association for Women in Sports Media and started a scholarship and internship program for female journalism students. You found 2 of the scholarships, which are named after your late parents. Why did you decide to do this? Now, you touched up on that. And what advice would you give to those who might not have a role model and are searching for their passion in life?
on the scholarship thing, it was really, sometimes the biggest things or whatever end up starting with the simplest little nothing or idea. It was one of my sisters. She had a small junior achievement scholarship to go to Indiana University. Now, it was small, and my parents were it turned out my dad went from rags to riches. So, it was like, it's not like she needed that scholarship to go to college. We were very fortunate that way. But she had it. And so she said to me when I became the first president of the Association for Women in Sports Media in 88, and then it was probably 89, I guess, because we needed to just kind of get things moving along. And wonderful women in California had started the organization. And I then they asked me to come in and be the first president. Mm-hmm. So we're getting started. So around 89-ish or so, she said, it doesn't take much money to have a scholarship, because I was probably talking about it would be fun to do more with this organization. And I forget what hers was, 100, 250, 500, whatever. You could even get out $100. Maybe it was 100 back then. I don't even know what she had. And so she said, you can do that. It was her idea. So I brought it to the other officers just to chat about it. And turned out I was doing a TV show here, Home Team Sports, early cable in DC. Leslie Visser, the great Leslie Visser, good friend of mine, covered obviously a ton of tennis, mentor, dear friend to this day. Leslie was also on the TV show with me. So we got $250 to do this TV show. So I said to Leslie, I'll donate my $250. This is, again, 89. Leslie, she said, oh, of course, I'll donate my $250. Now we got $500. Okay. Mm-hmm. So then I went to my sports editor, George Solomon of the Washington Post, hired a ton of women, really good, great editor, changed my life in so many ways. Some days we all want to kill each other because that's what journalism is. And I hate you. And no, I can't get this story done on deadline. What? And I asked George if he and a couple other sports editors of his pals around the country could kick in the other 500. Now that sounds like, well, that wouldn't be that much money, but we're talking more than 30 years ago. Anyway, now we've got $1,000. He matched it. And I then just said, look, we're just going to start our scholarship internship program. And so that was it. And I typed up a letter and copied it on the Washington Post copy machine. I had to mail it. I got addresses for all kinds of journalism schools. I said, would you just post this on your bulletin board? Old school stamps, envelopes. And I think we had about 40 women see these at Northwestern and Maryland and Missouri and Ivy League schools and Florida and Georgia and USC and any number of other great places that have Ohio State, whatever, Michigan, and then had, I think, about 40 women apply, and that we were off and running. And then we've had sponsors. And as you said, I fund 2 of them now. So it was just wanting to do more. It was just wanting to help. But this is something little, but we can make it. And it's turned into a really big thing. Over 200 women now have received our scholarship.
Yes,
so.
Beautiful. That's incredible.
That is so fantastic. I know Adriana has a couple other questions.
It's okay.
Well, I know she has. No, Karen is joining right now.
Oh, good.
And just so you know, Karen is a childhood cancer survivor. She was given an only 2% chance of survival. And so she's a host with us on every episode. She's never missed one. She's always been on in full. And then with the shift of schedule, she really wanted to be on. So she is. So here she's on right now, and she's going to come on, and she has a couple special questions for you. And then,
oh my gosh. Sure.
Yeah. So this is really exciting. So here she is. There's Karen.
Karen.
Hi, everyone.
So nice to meet you. I'll get back to your other question. I'm sorry, I go off on tangents, as you can tell, Adriana.
No, it's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. All right, go Karen.
Role models and stuff. Karen, great to see you. And oh my goodness, so your story is so heartwarming.
Thank you.
So honored to meet you.
Likewise. So I'm going to do my questions real quick because I'm still at work. So Christine, you are an award-winning sports columnist, a commentator for CNN, ABC News, PBS, NPR, and the best-selling author and nationally known speaker. Which one of these have you enjoyed the most and you feel most proud of?
That is a really good question, and it's a hard question, which means it's a really good question because that's what journalism is. So I know you've got a job and a career, but you could always have another one. You guys are asking excellent questions. I do a few podcasts, and this is now becoming my favorite one ever. So because you're just so smart and good. So thank you. It's really hard to say because I'm so fortunate to be able to have the variety that I do. I'm well aware that most people in their lives, whether they're in journalism or in any other field, it's kind of one thing. I mean, you can have a variety within a career, kind of, but it's still one thing. So I get to do so many different things that I love. I love writing. I'm at my laptop, writing, moving things around, delete, start over. I sometimes have a blank screen. I sometimes have writer's block, so to speak. Sometimes I just, know exactly what I want to write. I love TV because it's the exact opposite. It's live. So you can't move around. It's like, I just say it. So, and I love that because I love being on and having, I wouldn't call it pressure, but it's an adrenaline rush really, to talk and to just give, for 2 or 3 minutes to give my opinion, and that someone would care to want my opinion, and to have it be, whether it's CNN, national TV, ABC. I love that. And it's such an honor. I never, ever take any of this for granted. And I think, the other things as well. I love speaking with students, love mentoring students. I spend a lot of time talking to students as well. So I kind of choose all of the above. I'm sorry, but I think it would be wrong of me. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, I've always been a print journalist. I mean, I was raised and trained at Northwestern, undergrad, master's, print, writing, Miami Herald, Washington Post, USA Today. I had some internships as well during my college days, which internships for students, internships are everything, whatever. You want to be a doctor? Get an internship. Want to be a journalist? You want to be a business, whatever it might be, get an internship, have those summer experiences during your college years. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm not answering the question. I would love to, but I'm too confused about what I'm like.
That's the best answer. It is hard to choose. I mean, they all sound super fun and really interesting. So I wouldn't be able to choose either.
Thank you.
So is there a saying, quote, or mantra or phrase that you like to live by?
Karen, that's a good question. It's funny because I've already, and of course you were busy and I had to change this Zoom time. No, but it's okay because it's probably worth repeating one more time. I won't go into the whole story, but my dad used to always say to us kids, this ain't no dress rehearsal. And of course that means you got one shot at life. Go for it. Don't save anything, say it, do it, try it, whatever it might be that you want to do. Don't get caught in a grind that you don't like, or the daily routine that if you're not happy, this is it, go for it. And I've taken that to heart every day of my life.
That's perfect. Thank you. And last question. If you could describe yourself in one word, what would it be?
Well, it wouldn't be shy, would it? Although I used to be, and if any kids are listening, I was shy. And, I was afraid to kind of speak up, like 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. I really was. And there's even moments now where my heart will be like, I'm getting ready for a TV hit, my heart's beating. Now that's, I think, adrenaline. But you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not nervous, but there is that. We do all have different pieces of us, right? And if I look so confident and strong and whatever, the right word, bold or whatever, we're all inside. I think it's really important for us. I know you, Andrea, I know you agree with this, to tell people, to tell students, to tell young people, I don't know. There were days when I doubted. College friends like, you never doubted anything. I said, are you kidding? I didn't know. I was like a nervous wreck or whatever, at 18 or whatever it might have been. It's important to say those words because it's so hard, right? I mean, we didn't have social media. Andrea, you didn't have social media attacking everything we're doing. Can you imagine if you were coming up now?
No.
And everyone analyzes every dress, every move, every whatever, your hair, it grows, attacks you if you lose a set. Yeah, I mean, it's appalling. And same here, I didn't. So kids, it's hard. It's really hard now. We're seeing, Naomi Osaka, Simone Biles, Michael Phelps, so many others talk about it. And, but that's it. So I think it's important to say that. So having said all of that, I guess the word, this is so goofy. I'm going to say it, but there's a better word maybe than this, but I'm just going to say it, happy. I choose, or maybe happiness. I choose happiness. Now it's easy for me living the life of my dreams, very fortunate with best-selling books and wonderful contracts. It's easy for me to be happy, right? Yeah, happy. But I think even if I were, working an hourly job or let's say my whole life changed, right? Because my mom especially was really happy in her garden. Obviously, she raised 4 kids. She was a stay-at-home mom, would have been a great career woman. but that's back in the, got married in the late 50s, and then you kind of just started having kids, right? I mean, that's kind of what happened, obviously what happened for millions of women, and thank God they did. And they were our heroes and our role models. But my mom had a lot of that. My dad was more the go-getter. My mom was very happy to go to things, but to not sit at the head table, or to not, to talk to a great story we tell is my mom was sitting at a head table at a political event, and sitting next to her was Barbara Bush. Then George H.W. Bush was vice president. My mom at this table, sitting next to Barbara Bush, who wasn't mean. I mean, they had a nice conversation. My mom found herself talking more to the waiters who were serving them, like the person filling the water and, all the the servers, right? The wait staff. That's our mom. Like, Mom, we love that. And I think she didn't tell, I don't know. I think we've watched, and maybe I was there, my sister was there, and kind of noticed this was happening, right? So happiness is in, at least, really like, love what you're doing, stop and smell the roses, total cliche, but it's really kind of true. Now, people would probably say, if they watch this, there's no way Christine Brennan is that person, right? Because I'm hard charging and I really go for it and all that. But that makes me happy. I mean, I'm not like this, I'm not, obviously, I try to stay incredibly healthy, I don't have high blood pressure, it's all those things that you need to make sure of if you're super energetic or really going. And I stop a lot, I'll say, hey, I'm not going to do that because I just want to catch up on sleep or whatever it might be, or go to a movie or read a book. So I think happy or happiness would be a very long answer. I hope that made some sense.
No, it does. And if I could describe you in one word, would be energetic, which I love.
That's so fantastic. And I know I don't have the reporting skills like Christine, but for you, Karen, so I'll have to pick like 3 words, and I would take special, kind, and courageous. So we know that you're going to be heading off. Thank you, Karen. Have a great work day. And
all right. Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure meeting you, Christine.
You're so inspiring to me. Thank you.
I love you. We'll catch you out later today. Bye. Okay. I know Adriana has been waiting for this one question.
Oh,
second you came up. So go ahead, Adriana. I'll let you go with this.
I can't believe you're letting me to ask you, but that's okay.
I'll finish up with a closing line, but go ahead, Adriana.
Okay, this one is a fun one, and I've seen this one, but I still wanted to ask it just to see if it's changed. Can you share what is the secret to interviewing naked guys in the locker room?
Well, yes, let's explain first, right. When I was starting to cover the, not so much college football too, I was in some locker rooms, but most of it was interview areas here that, they wouldn't, they decided not to have any reporters, male or female. But the NFL, when I started covering the Washington football team for the Washington Post in 1985, Pete Rozelle, then the commissioner, mandated that there must be equal access for male and female reporters. Now, there might be some people who watch this and go, "What? Why are women in and men not? Or why are men in too with women in the men's locker room?" It's where we do our interviews. It's our workplace. It's the strangest workplace ever, but it is the workplace. And in the 80s and now, you cannot have unequal access for both the sexes in the workplace, obviously. You can't have that in an insurance office. You can't have that in a law office. You cannot have that in journalism. And so it is a strange workplace, but the football players and the teams want us in there. I mean, it's their choice to have us in because they'd rather do a quick interview while they're putting on their shirt and whatever than having to come find us, after when they really want to go home with their families, or especially if they've had a loss, especially if they fumbled 3 times. But we need to get the answers for the fans, the people who care, why they fumbled 3 times or whatever it might be. So that's why we're in the locker room. And that was a big battle in the 80s. And it wasn't sexy or exciting. I kept eye contact at all times. That was my dad's advice. And so I did. And I carried an 8x11 notebook. Again, we're talking, 81 was my first men's locker. 80 was the first men's locker room, Minnesota Vikings, when I was an intern at the Miami Herald. And and some of the players would whoop and holler and not handle themselves well, but others would be great. Many were still clothed in their football uniforms. Some already had their clothes, their street clothes on, some wearing towels. That was the 80s. That is a long, long time ago, right? So now now we are in a position where, thankfully, we've had decades and decades of equal access for male and female reporters. And by the way, men are allowed in the women's locker room, say at the women's Final Four. Mm-hmm. As Andrea knows well, unfortunately, the reason this doesn't get more attention of men covering women is because the biggest women's sport, tennis, most popular, the most money, and at least traditionally, and women's golf, also one that, comes to your town and male reporters would cover it. They're not locker room sports. They're individual sports. So Andrea, you would come out and do an interview at Wimbledon or whatever. I assume maybe occasionally there might be a locker room situation, but it's not a team, because if I would just want Andrea, she could come to me. But in my case of covering a 45-man football team, I might want to talk to 5 people within 10 minutes. So you just can't bring all of those guys to an interview room at the same time, which is why we do it in the locker room. And I'm saying this and spending a few minutes on this, mm-hmm. because the logistics are important for people to understand why we do this, mm-hmm. and why they don't hear about it with Serena Williams, why they don't hear about it with Djokovic, or Sampras, or
it's
Roger
a different sport. Absolutely.
Right. Because that's an individual sport. So it's an easy interview room thing. The Olympics, there's no locker rooms because of security. You can't get anywhere near that. We have a mixed zone. You're far, you're already, I could be a couple feet from Katie Ledecky, but there's no, with the security because of Munich in 1972 and the 11 Israeli athletes and coaches who were killed, there's no mixing with athletes, which makes perfect sense. So because I cover Olympics or golf, which again, no locker room, they come to us. The last time I was in a men's locker room, I believe, was the Washington Nationals, when Bryce Harper was still with the Nationals. So that's been at least 4 or 5 years. And I was doing a big feature on him. I went in, talked to Max Scherzer, the pitcher. All the players, of course, are wearing their clothes, because, again, the respect for women has changed so dramatically. They've had their sisters playing sports next to them. Their girlfriends in high school were athletes. The trainers that they've had. I mean, this is the huge change that doesn't get talked about very much in our country. Many of them probably on their high school and college team had female trainers who were working them out after the game in the locker room, or helping them with their knees or whatever it might be. So there's women on the sidelines at every college football game now. So so much of this is that. But the bottom line is, I'm interviewing a couple of the Nationals. Bryce Harper, the PR women, all the women at the PR people I was dealing with in the locker room at the Nats were women. A huge change. So many women in public relations who are then working in the locker room. You can see how it's just so different than it was, 40 years ago. And so bottom line is, Bryce Harper wanted to do the interview in the dugout. So he and I went and sat in the Nats dugout, not in the locker room, and did the interview. Almost every player, the respect is there now for women. Obviously, so many TV cameras in there, which was another point I made in the 80s. Why are you worried about me? You need to worry about the TV cameras that are going live, and there's 4-year-olds sitting with their parents watching this interview. Of course, signing up for sports journalism means that I know I'm going to be in the men's locker room the same way nurses and doctors know what they're going to be dealing with. So it was a ridiculous, misogynistic conversation in the 80s. And thankfully, women are in such a huge place in the workforce, in sports media, more to come, and in sports administration, that we have resolved this problem, and there's equal access everywhere, for sure.
Thank you so much for sharing in a way you did. That's wonderful. I truly appreciate it. Oh, my goodness.
So when you said about your dad dating everything, it's interesting, because I wrote this note from Andrea, and I grew up in the media. So it's adventurous. Like you said, like, you're happy. You can look at things in that way, but it has its adventures. And I grew up, I was misquoted twice when I was 13 years old and 14 years old. And after that, turning pro at 14, I never read an article on myself. It just was easier to not do it. And so every once in a while, someone will send me something. And so the other day, someone sent something, and I wanted to correct it. I've never done that ever in my life. And I thought, you know what, in this day and age, why not, do a note from Andrea? I date everything. I purposely, for some reason, didn't date this. This was just yesterday. Because I thought I want it to be forever. So if someone picks it up and looks at it, it's not. And so listening to you now, I was so excited that we actually did have the reschedule, because everything happens for a reason. And to listen to your knowledge and wisdom and your dad's as well, it's like, okay, so that was one time I did that. I'm going to make sure I date things from here on out every single time. So I appreciate that. So last two questions. When like reporting in sports, like reporting on a triumph in sports, a victory score, athletic achievement, whatever milestone that brings to audiences and players, whether it's applause, celebration, sometimes there are even parades in cities. So fans and athletes can feel long-term adoration. At times, your subject content is different from that baseline. So do you have a specific criteria checklist when you pick a story to write? Whoever you're working for might say, hey, how about this? But when you're doing your columns, there's a vast amount of stories you can collect from. Do you have how do you determine who's going to make it in your column, or what is?
Yeah, often it's just off the news. So breaking news, when Live Golf and the PGA announced they were merging, I've been so critical of Live Golf. So, when that news broke, I wrote a column. As I mentioned earlier, I was flying to Paris. So I literally wrote on the plane, and then I literally sent it when I got on the wireless at Charles de Gaulle Airport while waiting in the line at customs. And I sent on my, on this laptop, holding it. My niece and nephew were around me, like pushing my bag along or whatever. And I'm literally sending my column. So that column, and as many do, come from news events. And that is really, I think, the best kind of column in many ways, because that's what it's certainly interesting to people, interesting to me. It's new, something's happened. The definition of news, obviously, and so that's it's called writing off the news. I'll write off the news today. If you're at a game or an Olympics, obviously that's news. Katie Ledecky wins a gold medal. I'm writing about Katie. Somebody fails to do well, you're writing about that. It can be negative too. That gives me no joy, but that's a story too. When Katie came in second to Ariane Titmus at the 2021 Tokyo Olympics in the 400 freestyle, that was the story. Now, she had a great time. She was actually happy. So it's Ledecky loses, but she's actually happy because she got beat by someone who just swam faster, but Katie did not do poorly at all. So, those kinds of things, there's nuance too. Yeah. And then sometimes, also the other stuff, like I've been breaking a lot of the figure skating Olympic sex abuse issues. That's all my reporting. And that's actually not columns. I'm writing news stories mostly. And that's just people coming to me, trusting me. I'm so honored. I've, let everyone know, Ashley Wagner, the great voice. She's very much like Allie Raceman or Simone Biles in gymnastics. Ashley Wagner, just herself a survivor of alleged sexual abuse from the late John Coughlin in figure skating. So all that is self-generated. I do love breaking news as well. I hate those stories, but I will work on those sometimes for months with those women in this case to talk about their horrible experiences and work to tell their story honestly, truthfully, and with passion and with understanding of what they've gone through. In this point in my career, I'm very honored and I'm saddened to have to write them, but they're there. So I'm glad to be able to give those women a voice because I have that platform to do that. And then even breaking news, like when the Olympics were being postponed, I did break that story worldwide, which I was very proud of. And I had a source because I've been around forever. Longevity actually helps. And I was able to break that. So I have, even within journalism, even with print journalism, I wear several different hats. And I guess a lot of it depends on what I hear. Everyone has my phone number. Call me. It's a two-way street. I tell them sources, information, obviously then columns, big issues that happen. It's a variety even within that job description of USA Today columnist.
Right. Now, how do you cope when you have a traumatic story that reaches the depths of your heart and soul? That some of your storylines are, they're heart-grabbing, but they're, like you said, you might not enjoy writing it, but it's truth and it's to be shared. So how do you cope?
I feel so emboldened. I'm not happy or pleased or I don't know that I have an emotion. Other than I feel awful that these women, in this case, like the Olympic sex abuse victims in the figure skating world or gymnastics, I'm horrified and I'm angry that they are in this position. And that period, full stop. I'm emboldened to tell their story, and I feel so it's so important. And there's no joy in that. It's almost, you feel like it's I've been given a great gift. I I'm so lucky to be doing what I'm doing at this point in my career. Most of my colleagues are long gone, buyouts, layoffs, retirement, academia, PR, and I'm doing exactly what I love and have been doing since I was, 22 years old. I mean, unbelievable.
The calling. You have a calling.
Well, it's just such a passion. So within that, I would hate myself if I didn't, and this is obviously another long answer to a very important question, if I didn't do this. But I also want to do this. I want to be there. So when I'm listening, for example, Ashley Wagner, the Olympic bronze medalist, three-time national champ figure skater. Maybe people have heard of her, maybe they haven't. Look her up. She's amazing. World silver medalist in 2016, retired now. She texted me because I'd covered her for years. She texted she might want to have this was in August of 19, 4 years ago. And that's how we started. She said she wanted to talk. And when we talked, I said it. Most journalists don't say this. I said it. We are off the record. I started that. I said, tell me whatever you want to tell me. This is your story. It's not mine. I didn't even know what was coming. Your story, not mine. You're the boss in the sense of you're going to tell me things. I'm going to take notes. Nothing happens until you say it's okay to report it or not. And that's how we start. And that went for a month, which is a short amount of time, frankly. I've worked on things for 3, 4, 5 months. Still got a few people that I'm trying to have talk about something, and that could be a year or two if they want to talk. It's their story. They've gone through the horrors of sexual abuse, or sexual assault alleged, or what, obviously they say it's true. So we're going to take it's on their clock and on their time. And I guess I'm answering your very important question this way. I am so focused then on doing the right thing by them that I go into like journalist mode in the best of ways and know that what I'm doing is exactly right. And I have such a purpose that I'm not internalizing it myself. I accept right off the bat that this, and first words I ever say, like with Ashley, I am so sorry. When she started telling me, I am so sorry you went through this. It's not me as the journalist, me as a human being, right? I am so sorry. Of course, it's totally real. I feel it 100%. I'm horrified for her. But then my purpose, what can I do since I am positive, since I choose happiness? Hard to choose happiness in this kind of situation. But what I can do, it's terrible it happened, and there's not a darn thing I can do, except now we can tell this story. And what has happened with that story, which was a huge video that she read, her personal story that I helped her write, over 1 million hits in one day. I have no idea how many hits now, 4 years later. Huge A1 story at USA Today the next day. And then continued things. Now she's a voice, and she will always comment on others, especially if people are not being held and brought to justice. And also, I've told her this, anytime someone comes to me, they say, I'm coming to you because Ashley Wagner spoke to you. So how can I feel terrible for Ashley, but the opportunity to tell more stories and to give voice to the voiceless, to tell the story of a woman who died just because she was so got into drugs and terrible things because of the sex abuse that she said she suffered by the same man, John Coughlin, whose whole thing is horrible. I'm able to do that. And I don't want to be bogged down emotionally. I want to be able to do that. And so I will say this, because I don't want people to think I'm not human. When I was researching, I'll keep this to a minute because I know I'm blabbing here. When I was researching my book, Inside Edge, the bestseller on figure skating, and I started to hear all these stories about gay men. This is at 1995, 4 and 5. And it was called The Gay Cancer, AIDS, and HIV. And no one did any, hardly, you remember, and, it's like, who's talking about this? What is it? It's taboo, Rock Hudson, people don't want to touch people, the whole thing. We just knew so little. I started hearing about all the gay men in figure skating who died because of cancer. And I thought, my goodness, this is so horrible. But as I'm hearing some sources, as I'm researching a whole book, it wasn't cancer, it was HIV and AIDS. And this unbelievable situation where figure skating, US and around the world, was ignoring this issue and not giving education to their young skaters, who of course aren't in school, so they miss sex ed in school, and they're in hotel rooms together, male, female, whatever it might be. two guys, and the thought of where this was. So now I decided to do a whole chapter called Skating's Tragic Secret in Inside Edge. It became the excerpted chapter in the book, but I needed to talk to parents and family members of the deceased coaches, skaters, to confirm with them how they died. Brutal. So I had phone numbers. One of them I'll never forget. It was a man was probably in his 80s, and he was the father. But it's one of the young men that I'm writing about who died in the book. And I knew he died. Of course, the poor man was dead. And they'd always said cancer. And it took 3 tries. And I said, I'm so sorry to bother you again. I'm so sorry. And I said, but it would help because there's power in numbers. If the more numbers, then I can tell this story in a way that I promise you will appreciate and you will respect, and then get the word to this figure skating federation that they're not doing enough, because look at the numbers. And I just felt so strongly on that, if that would be the case. I never forced anyone. Third phone, he said, call me back in a couple of days, call him back again in a couple of days. Third phone call, I said, was it AIDS, HIV? And he said, yes. And he was crying. And on the phone, there was no doubt that I had tears in my eyes. So there was no doubt, one, as a human being, I just couldn't believe I was actually doing that and hearing that. And as a journalist, I was saying I was doing the exact right thing. And that chapter still is discussed today because of the power of those wonderful people and that father and many like him who trusted me just to add their son's name to this horrible list of people being lost because of a disease that figure skating was not talking to young people about. Mm-hmm. So the human, I hope that helps understand. I know
it's really wonderful, because you said so many things that the important thing is educating. You never are trying to blame. You're never trying to target. You don't try to harm anything, and anything that you share in truth. And sometimes truth can be perceived that way, but education helps society. It helps humanity. And when it's portrayed as education, as information to help another, to have the intention to help another, it makes all the difference in the world. Because like you said, you never know when someone, you don't know how someone is going to to value their life, to use it to benefit someone else's, or even within to be of something, to educate another. And so you've always done that. And in closing this, and that's why I was so excited to have you on, because there's so many aspects, and just to watch you in motion and watch you in action was like, who gets that? That is so cool. So
well, thank you. And by the way, can I just interrupt to say, didn't I say I'd take like 1 minute and it was 5? So obviously people can know that my sense of time, I need to work on this.
So to close, like my entire life, I've always enjoyed the magic of the Olympics, and I'm in continuous respect and awe of how they train. Like Olympians know it could be a millisecond or 1 point every 4 years. And it's different now. They let professional athletes in Olympics, but in my era, when I grew up, they weren't on the cover of cereal boxes. They weren't getting any financial help. They trained and did everything. And it was an opportunity to do something they love. And their parents, you've said this before in some of your columns, they've mortgaged their homes and they've done things to get their child their dream, not to have someone that gets all these riches and fame and glory. It's just for their child to pursue their dream. And so at Little Star Foundation, I've been fortunate for Olympians who carry that Olympic spirit. Every Olympian I've come in contact with have held that true Olympic spirit in such a beautiful way. And they visited with the kids and brought their medals. And I've been an Olympian. And so I know to play for your country, to honor your country and be part of that is something really special. Adriana and I once went internationally and played for the US in a Nations Cup in tennis. And it was so exciting because the trophy was like this, but it was, we've done this to be part of something. And so can you just, in closing, you've probably been at more Olympics than Phelps. And when you look at some of the other reporters, you have been there over an era. And I wish they had like a gold medal platform for people like you, journalists, who share with the world what we get to enjoy and what we get to learn from and be educated by. So in closing, what like Olympic spirit would you like to share? Because you do exude that as well.
Oh, well, thanks. Well, growing up, I couldn't wait till the Olympics would come on TV. And back then there are no, as we know, no VHS tapes, no DVRs, no anything. So, if I raced on 76 Olympics in Montreal, I just graduated from high school and had a summer job as a bank teller. And if I, raced home because it would be 8 to 11, obviously Eastern time, on ABC, the Olympics. And if I got home at 8:15, those 15 minutes were gone forever. It's like you couldn't go back and you didn't tape them anyway, right? So I love the Olympics. And what was it? It was every 4 years now, obviously every 2. It was 2.5 weeks. They dropped into your life, all these beautiful athletes like yourselves, and you there, and then you're gone. They never overstay their welcome. We got an 82 game NBA season and 40 some game WNBA season and 162 game baseball season.
Tennis, that's years round. That's year round.
Right. Yeah, it goes on and on. And this is that one chance at one moment, and then they're gone. It's almost like, no, come back. Like I would actually get tears in my eyes at the end of the Olympics, both, I don't remember 68 really, but 72, 76 for sure, winter, summer. And, I remember my siblings were like, oh, Chris, Chris is like crying. And my mom would say, oh, let her cry. It just talked to me. It spoke to me. I was an athlete. I played a lot of sports in high school, and I still play sports, and I played tennis. I mean, someday my goal, I'd love to hit with you, Andrea.
We're coming. Look out.
Love to, you'd blow it right by me, but it would just be fun to just, because the speed and, you'd think I would have done that with Pam Shriver or Billie Jean. I never have. I stood on a stage once with Billie and we both hit balls into the audience, but it's not the same. Anyway, so I loved it so much. And it's just been a thing that it's meant everything to me as a child, that, how cool this was. And I would have hoped to go to one as a fan, someday, maybe. Could I go to an Olympics, pay my own way? And to think I've covered 20 in a row, winter and summer, LA in 84, never missed one, knock on wood, all expenses paid, credential around my neck, interviewing the athletes. Michael Phelps is dripping wet, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, Carl Lewis, you name it, right after everything, within minutes of their finishing their event and their performance. And I've done it for these newspapers and for TV. By the way, ABC News now I work for at the Olympics. And of course, what network was I watching as a little kid growing up? ABC. Talk about full circle. Would I've ever believed that when I was sitting there in Toledo watching the Olympics? So it's about dreams come true. It's, for me, the opportunity to be around these athletes and to tell their story, because they are so special. Because often it's not, to your point, it's not about the money. They do it for the love of the sport. If money comes, like it has for Katie Ledecky and Michael Phelps and Jackie and Carl and whoever, many athletes over the years, obviously the gymnasts, if money comes, it's because of their performance. It's not guaranteed money. And so I just love it. Is it perfect? No. But but I think it's the best thing we got going. It's our best shot at people doing things the right way. And I think that's why people love it so much. And I certainly am one of them. And so I'll see you in Paris next year.
That's very cool. And to know that you and Billie Jean King, obviously Billie Jean, what she's done for tennis and women's sports is forever. She should have that platform. But to know you both were together on that, you've brought sports and humanity together in a way, and you continue to do so, and exactly with what you say, this happiness and this joy and your talent. And so thank you so much for just being part of this. We loved it, and we're grateful to you, and blessings on all your travels and all your work and all you do.
Thank you.
And again, I just have to say, I mean, Adriana, of course, to you, thank you so much. Andrea, really, I mean, I told a few people, I don't necessarily get starstruck, but I said, I'm going to be on a Zoom on a podcast with Andrea Jaeger. It's like, what? If you think people like, oh, that's in the past. I mean, Andrea Jaeger? What? I mean, because tennis, there's something about it, whether it's Chrissy, Billie Jean, we grew up.
Martina, yeah.
You were on, it's like, and of course, as an American, it's like The Girl Next Door, all that stuff that tennis was at a time when we had only 3 channels. That means everyone's watching pretty much the same thing. Yes, people know who you are and will know who you are forever. So thank you. What an honor for me to be on here with you.
Thank you so much. We started this year, the Little Store Light podcast, because we felt like people needed an infusion of education, enrichment, entertainment, and to be bringing remarkable stories of people that I grew up with or grew up knowing. Why not give that gift and blessing? And so thank you. You've done that your whole life. You've followed your dreams and you're still enjoying them, it's a lesson to be learned for everyone as well. It's like dreams can be lifelong. They really can. And callings as well. So we will be cheering for you as much as we cheer for our athletes, if not more for you. so thank you again.
Oh my gosh. And thank you. And Adriana, of course, thank you as well. And just a delight to be in. Karen, of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
It's wonderful to be on with you.
Thank you.
Bye.
You guys, we'll talk to you, okay? Definitely.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.